Alright, I want to welcome everybody back to the Talk Tech with 50 channel. This is 50. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to the channel and watching the video. I want to wish everybody a happy New Year's, and hopefully you got a chance to spend it with your people. You feel me? So without further ado, welcome back to the channel. To all my subscribers, I appreciate you for checking me out. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to go ahead and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe. That way you could see whenever I have new content dropping, which will be a lot. Cool. So the one thing I wanted to talk about today was certifications don't mean that somebody is an expert. I hear that all too often, that somebody will say that, oh, you have this certification. I'll get specific. Oh, well, this person has a CISSP, so they must be an expert in this. No. Oh, well, this person has a CCNA, or they must be an expert in this. No, not really. Getting a certification doesn't mean that somebody's an expert in something. Getting a certification really doesn't even mean that they're proficient or even knowledgeable about something. All that a certification means is you pass the test. And I know that sounds crazy coming from somebody like me who advocates strongly for certifications, but there are two primary reasons. The big one is the money reason. So certain certifications hold certain, monetary weight, whether people want to believe it or not. And you can use it as leverage when you're going in for a position. And if you have one of the top certifications for that position, then you can get the higher end of the pay range for that role if you're certified, or if you have the super bona fide experience. But the certification is definitely gonna play a bigger role in you getting, the most money that you can, because there's a lot of people out there that unless you're an architect, just experience isn't gonna make somebody break the bank for you, let's say. And I know that sounds kind of rough, but if you have two identical people with two identical skill sets, one has a certification and one doesn't, guess which one is going to be paid $30,000 more? That's the unfortunate truth, but that's why I advocate for certifications. And another reason I advocate for certifications is to beat the HR game. What I mean by that is recruiters, when they're looking through resumes, they're pretty much matching keywords. And those certifications, they fall under the qualifications, and they may be desired, preferred, then must-haves. But those certifications, those keywords match, those are some pretty big keywords, and you have a better chance of making it through that hiring process. Well, at least getting past that part of it, which to me it needs some work, but I'll touch on that on a later date. And so, yeah, those are my main two reasons for advocating so strongly for certifications. But make no mistake, that does not mean that somebody is an expert in something just because they passed a certification exam. I'll give you a perfect example. I'll pick on network engineers. I was a network engineer, so I know what that is. And we'll just use Cisco because that's a universal one. And so when it comes to Cisco certifications, you have your CCNA, your CCNP, and CCIE to keep things pretty simple. And you have people who go and get these certifications, of course. You get somebody who's a CCNA, and they should know certain things, but you can't really hold it against somebody if they don't know something, But if you're outside of that world, if you're not in, the know, or at least the technical side of it, you might see somebody's a CCNA, and it's, oh, well, they must be an expert at networking. No, they might have some proficiencies. They might have a little bit more knowledge than other people, but by no means are they expert. There are very few. There are, I want to say, at least 4 certifications where if you get these certifications, one could consider you an expert, but chances are they wouldn't consider themselves an expert. That would be the Cisco CCIE, Juniper JNCIE, Cisco CCDE, Cisco Architect, which is retired, and VMware's top one. I forget what it's called. I think the VCDX or something like that. And with the CCIE, CCDE, JNCIE, you have to do labs. Not only do you have to pass a very difficult preliminary exam, you also have to do a lab. 8 hours, you got to fly somewhere. You're given an architecture or a design, you got to put it together. You have to troubleshoot something, go to lunch, they're going to break it, and then you go back and you fix it. You can't test dump your way out of that. You can't BS your way out of that. You're going to have to know what you're doing, because people who know what they're doing are going to be the ones that are grading you. You also have, what was the other one? The VMware and the old Cisco Architect. And those were certifications where, in order to get those, you had to come up with a design and you had to defend your design. Or they would give you a design and then you work it to the way that you would want to work it, and then you would have to defend it in front of a board, which, again, these are the top of the top people. You're not going to be able to even halfway BS them at all. So those certifications, I could see people calling them an expert, but to be fair, running into those kinds of people, if you don't work on certain kinds of projects, you're really not going to run into those kinds of people until you get a little bit further up in your career, or you're working on some pretty complex projects. You're really not going to run into those kinds of people. Not like that. But pretty much every other certification, you getting it or somebody else getting it doesn't mean that they're an expert in that. So let's take the Cisco CCNA. If somebody goes for a job, if I'm looking to hire a network admin or a network engineer and they have a CCNA, cool beans. I'm going to ask you some questions about your experience, not about the certification. I'm not going to ask you the VTP server types. I'm not going to ask you none of that test stuff. I'm going to ask you about your experience. What do you do? Do you stage devices? Do you do monitoring? Do you do basic end user troubleshooting? Do you mainly do stuff on the switch where you do your troubleshooting of VLANs and duplex mismatches and those kinds of things? Do you handle those kinds of things? I'm going to ask you about your experience, because your experience is what dictates your level of proficiency, of course, not a certification. Now, as you start to get higher, like let's say a Cisco CCNP, again, you have a CCNP, cool beans. I am not going to ask you about redistribution or policy-based routing. I'm not going to ask you any of that exam stuff. Not at all. If you're a Cisco CCNP and you're going for a position that pays $120K plus, no, I'm going to ask you about your experience. I want to know about any potential showstoppers that you had in your last project. I want to hear about how you do your rollbacks. I want to hear about the last time you had to stay up till 4 a.m. in the morning, or the last time that you were waking up at 4 in the morning. You know, what was the root cause and what was the fix? I want to know if you can mentor somebody, if you can teach somebody, if you can train somebody, if you can teach somebody what you know. Can you impart your knowledge onto other people? Because those are the kinds of skill sets that paying that kind of money warrants. You know, now I completely understand if if you were a network engineer and you got your CCNP and you're trying to get into a more technical role, and you were doing probably like more staging of these networking devices, you were doing like staging and setups and rack and stacks and all that, and you want to finally get your technical chops dirty, I completely understand that. But at least you know where you are, and you're being honest, and you're not leading somebody on. Because the thing is, whenever somebody lies about their proficiency, that tends to affect the team, especially the higher up you go, right? So let's say this CCNP, they were to get hired and they said that, oh yeah, I can troubleshoot to a certain degree, or yeah, I can do the routing stuff, I can do all this stuff, I can do some ASA stuff, I know how to do these things. But in reality, they couldn't. And so if the one person or the two people that could, if they were out at the same time and we had to rely on this person and there was an outage or we needed them to actually perform, they couldn't do it. That severely hurts the team, and now they're going to have to call somebody, who may be sick or who may be on vacation in to fix this issue, or they might have to go get their laptop and fix this issue, and then the company is down. And to be honest, that's not a really good look. It's actually a very, very, very bad look. And so that word expert, it gets tossed around in our field, and I would be very wary, especially if somebody deemed themselves an expert in something, unless it's proven. Now, there is ego in IT. Don't get it twisted. There is definitely ego in IT, but most people aren't going to say that they're an expert in something. They're going to say that they're knowledgeable about a subject, even if they really do know a lot. Even if at their company, they are the quote unquote subject matter expert, or they're SME, but they're going to say they're knowledgeable about something, or, I'm the one that you can ask about things about this around here, because they know that there's somebody else out there. There's somebody that helps them with stuff, and they know way more than they do. There are people, like, you can be super technical, but then they rely on who other people would call an expert, because there's levels. That's why I say if somebody deems themselves an expert, especially in IT, I would strongly suggest that you take that with a grain of salt. And so the whole point of this is certifications don't make you an expert. Experience increases your proficiency. Strongly advise that everybody, even if you are going the certification route, I strongly suggest you do the certifications, but make sure that you have the experience that goes along with it. That'll greatly benefit your career and the others who are around you. All right. So if there are any questions, comments, or concerns about anything that I talked about today, please be sure to go ahead and drop those comments in the comments section. If there's anything that y'all want me to talk about or discuss, you can hit me up on Twitter or on Instagram. I'll drop the links to that below. This is 50 from Talk Tech with 50. I appreciate y'all for checking me out. Be sure to hit that like button, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed. I appreciate you.